All right, we're live for our first episode of Whiskey Wednesday in the new year. Happy New Year, fellas.
Yeah.
We have Master Distiller Harlen Wheatley and Joshua Steely, and we're sitting in the new Stagg Lodge here at the distillery. Looks like we've got some Stagg to get into too, Joshua.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Steely, and I'm here with Harlen Wheatley, our Master Distiller. Harlen, Happy New Year.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, should be fun today. So today's all about Stagg. George T. Stagg was a bourbon pioneer, but he also played a really critical role in the history of our distillery here at Buffalo Trace Distillery. So we're going to talk a little bit about him before we jump into the whiskey. Sound like a plan?
Sounds like a good plan.
Great. He was born in 1835 in Girard County, Kentucky, and he, lived a very interesting life. He was a captain in the Union Army during the Civil War. After that, he started a liquor wholesale business. And eventually he bought the OFC distillery in 1878 from a gentleman by the name of Colonel E.H. Taylor Jr. They would go on to work together for several years until about 1885 when E.H. Taylor decided he wanted to go and do something a little different. So Stagg took over day-to-day operations of the distillery, and he really thrived after that. In 1897 he hired a young Albert Bland to be his office boy, and obviously sort of launched Albert Bland's illustrious career. In 1904, the distillery was renamed the George T. Stagg Distillery, and it was one of the very few distilleries to operate during World War I, Prohibition, and World War II, and continues to operate today as Buffalo Trace Distillery. So he left quite the legacy, really interesting character. Harlen, when you think of Stagg or George T. Stagg, what comes to mind?
Well, the Stagg brand and label for us, goes back a long way, and it really kind of stands for our history and really the proof of the bottle and the bourbon that's in the bottle really kind of speaks to the power of the brand and the power of the distillery, and it's just really a representative label for our distillery, and we're really proud to have it.
Yeah, that's well said. Speaking of bourbon in the bottle, why don't we start tasting a little whiskey?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, let's do it. So today we have, a lineup of a couple offerings. We're going to start with a Stagg Junior offering. This is our latest release of Stagg Junior, 131.1 proof, and that's what we have in front of us. So let's start there.
It tastes like Christmas candy.
I mean, big, bold, flavorful. As soon as we brought it to our nose, it just lets you know it's there. Warms you up on a cold winter day a little bit for sure. Yeah. So this is, so Harlen, tell us a little bit about the profile of what sort of whiskey are we putting in the bottle for Stagg Junior?
Well, it's one that it's a rye bourbon. And of course most people know what bourbon means, but it's at least 51% corn, aged in a new charred oak barrel, has to be distilled at less than 160 proof, and really all these things are designed to protect bourbon character. But what we do at Buffalo Trace to make this one a little unique is we age it up a little older. It's about a 9-year-old. That's our standard for Stagg Junior, and then we bottle it at barrel strength, uncut and unfiltered. And what that does, it allows you to, basically put everything that's in that barrel into the bottle. It's really more about what's not done to the bourbon. It's not filtered. You're not stripping any of the flavor, and you're just getting that full-bodied flavor. Everything you love about rye bourbon.
So barrel proof, meaning what it sounds like, right out of the barrel. Yeah. Nothing added to it, no water added to it, yeah. And it's a little bit in its natural state, right?
It is. We put it away at 125 proof, and as it ages, it gains a little bit of proof, and it's all based on warehouse location. So if theoretically, if you put it in some of our warehouses, we're kind of unique that we have a lot of different atmospheres and varieties. We call them fingerprints in the warehouse, and And some of the barrels could be on a top floor of a warehouse, which would experience a lot more aging, faster. But generally on the older bourbons, 9 to 15 years old, we like to, pick barrels that are in the middle floors or lower floors, and that way it ages gracefully. So that way proof went from 125 to 130, and it was just a nice, graceful age,
Guys, we've got a lot of questions coming in and a lot of good compliments. They love the history of this and complimenting you, Joshua, on that. We've got people from New York, Florida, all over the place chiming in right now, so hello to all those folks. Couple questions or comments. BB Tom on Facebook just says, I just tried Stagg Jr. 2 days ago. Now I know why it's so hard to find. So maybe talk about that a little bit. We have a lot of questions about, how often is this released? Is this a ongoing every month, or is this talk
Sure.
about the release?
I can take that one. So our Stagg Junior, we release it twice a year. So generally it's a sort of spring, summer, and then sort of fall, winter release. And so what we just tasted was our, what a lot of people might call our batch 15. So it's our 15th ever release of that. I think we started this, the first release was in 2013. And so we just released this back in, last month, basically. So this one's hot off the press. And the one we're about to taste was the release prior to that. So that was released back in the summer of 2020. So that was batch 14. And we're going to see as we go through this that every batch is a little different. You guys are going to notice that the proofs are a little different. And so that's kind of how you can tell the vintage aspect. We don't, it's not a full-on vintage, but there's a sort of vintage aspect to it. And that every one is unique, has its own unique sort of flavor profile, and they share the same backbone, but every one has its different nuances, which it's fun to taste that way.
And Harlen, can you talk about where those nuances come from?
Yeah, because it is based on warehouse location and timing. So if you have a 9-year-old barrel that's been on the 4th floor of warehouse C, you're going to get a fingerprint on that floor versus a different warehouse, and then based on those batches, you're going to get a slight difference. But the recipes are the same, the distillation techniques are the same, fermentation, barrel standards are the same. So, like you said, you're getting the same backbone, but you're getting those nuances, which is nice. And when you get barrel strength, uncut and unfiltered into a glass and get to taste that, it's just like walking into the warehouse. I can almost smell those warehouses as you walk through and give that a little taste because it's it's just the best way to do it.
Yeah, I've heard you say, Harlen, that some of these Staggs, maybe when we get to George T Stagg, is everything you should like in a bourbon's in that bottle.
That's right.
And I think it's same with Stagg Junior. It's uncut, unfiltered. You got a lot of flavor in there.
Yeah, it starts out in the barrel with all this flavor in it, and it would be kind of a shame to filter some out. So that's why we offer it that way, and people get to enjoy it. Some people put it, a cube of ice in there to bring the proof down because it's maybe a little bit high, but even at this high proof, you're able to, taste it, and it's still smooth and still nice, and that's all based on yeast and distillation and the way we manage the barrels. So the idea is to be able to drink it at any proof.
And I guess that's the nice thing about the barrel proof. You drink it however you want at that point, proof it down, or drink it straight from the barrel.
You can always add water, but you can't take water out, and so I think, what Harlen and the team do here that's really magical is something that's over 130 proof. What you get is flavor, and it's not just burn. It's complexity, it's flavor, and that's certainly what I think the team here is trying to accomplish. Why don't we move on to our second Stagg Junior? And just as we're getting into this, Harlen, I think, part of the experience of whiskey, it's a multi-sensory sort of deal. The color is something just to stop and really acknowledge. It's really quite beautiful, and I think that's something else you get with a barrel-proof whiskey.
Mm-hmm. Yes, even sitting over here, guys, I can really see the color. I mean, it's nice and rich and dark. It's just the color really shows up.
So this one's 130.2 versus 131.1 is the first one. So just a touch lighter in proof. Tastes a little different.
Still a little bit, but it's still good. And,
Great.
they got like I said, still got the Christmas candy in there.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the sweetness and caramels, tannins, and it's all really nice and, nice balance.
I agree. A little touch of dryness from the oak, spending some time in that barrel. It's great. And Tim, you had a question earlier about, someone just tried it, and we do just release it twice a year. So it's a little bit, limited, but I think this is an opportunity just to say, as always, we continue to make more of this. We're really proud of, this brand and the whiskey in the bottle, and we're going to continue to make more of it.
Yeah, we're sitting up on the farm. That's where the Stagg Lodge sits. And if you could see outside, there's a lot of big new warehouses being built. And so all these brands are getting more barrels every year, right? So we're laying down more barrels every year.
Yeah, we made more whiskey this year than we've ever done. We set a record, and we're going to continue to grow, and we're spending, hundreds of millions of dollars on expansion. We're building a new 58,000 barrel warehouse every 3 months, and we're filling that up as fast as we build it, and we have no plans of slowing down. So, there's more bourbon coming, and more bourbon getting shipped every day. So,
yeah, that's great.
So, why don't we move on to Mr. George T Stagg? So this was the original sort of expression of Stagg, and I think we released the first George T Stagg around 2002, give or take. This is obviously part of our Buffalo Trace Distillery Antique Collection, which is a collection of 5 different whiskeys we release once a year every fall. It's kind of a sort of flagship or just showpiece of an offering from our distillery, something that I think is somewhat of a best foot forward for us and shows the variety of what we do. And George T. Stagg, I think, year in and year out is a powerhouse member of that group. And so this is very similar to what we tasted, but with one big difference. Harlen, why don't you talk about the difference here?
well, the main difference is really where we came up with the Stagg Junior label is the fact that it's just older. We use the same recipe, but we age it up. Our standard is 15 years. We got a 15-year-old bourbon, and again, uncut and unfiltered. So you're letting that barrel sit, and over a period of time, it evaporates, and we lose 3 or 4% every single year. So over 15 years, you've only got this much in the barrel.
I actually have that stat for this one.
Yeah.
59% evaporation for this specific. This is our 2020 release. So
Yeah. So you only had 40% left in the barrel. So it's just not a lot left, but it's super concentrated. You're concentrating those flavors. You're getting the good balance based on the recipe and the yeast and all the things we do up front. So it's just a really nice way to look at this rye bourbon. It's kind of toward the end of the life of this recipe. We go all the way up to, we do have an Eagle Rare 20-year-old now, but it's still in the later years of its life.
Mm-hmm. So let's give it a taste.
Yeah, that's a good one.
This is a good one.
Man, it never gets old. Like you said, it's everything you want in bourbon.
Yeah,
It really is.
yeah.
130.4 proof. That was this one, the 2020 release. We just have 59% evaporations. It came from warehouses L, K, and Q on the first, second, and 9th floor. So mostly lower floors, a little bit from the top floors, a few different warehouses.
Yeah, we try to do that. We'll blend them together. That way, you get a nice balance of the, aging characteristics across the batch. And we do it once a year. So, labor of love for sure.
Got a question on Facebook about if one of the rules of bourbon goes into the barrel at is 125 proof
On this one, yeah, max.
how does it become 130 odd proof?
Well, if it sits in a barrel, the barrel is porous, and the water evaporates easier than the alcohol. So what's left behind, it gains in strength. Now that's in our environment. In other environments, like if you went to Scotland and it was really humid and cooler, sometimes the water comes into the barrel and you'll actually get a reduction in proof. And we find that a lot of times in the really lower floors, it's cave-like in a lot of our warehouses, so sometimes you'll get a reduction in proof, but over time, in general, for all of our warehouses, the proof goes up.
Okay, great, thanks.
So you see, so just to recap, the big difference in George T. Stagg versus Stagg Jr. is really age. Same mash bill, same barrel proof, uncut, unfiltered, and there's plenty of age on our Stagg Junior, but when you get to this 15 plus years, I mean, you're just tasting the difference in that extra age. The fruit flavors get darker. I think it sort of even softens the edges of the whiskey even more, adds complexity. There's a reason why this is, I think we're really proud of this, and it's generally considered a world-class whiskey year in and year out.
It's definitely our most popular of our antique collection. It never fails to, deliver, and that's by design. We want it to be a really good bourbon, but if you can imagine a barrel sitting in a warehouse all by itself and sitting there full, and after 15 years of aging, concentrating down to 40% left in the bottom of that barrel, and just pulling all those nice extracts from that wood the whole time. I mean, that's what you're left with. It's a recipe, is really what it is.
Yeah, and that sort of answers this question, but I want to ask it because we have several. I'm just kind of grouping them into one question. But VB Tom on Facebook asks a question for Harlen Wheatley: how do you make a 130 plus proof bourbon so smooth and tasty? So that's you sort of touched on that.
Yeah, we could tell you, but we'd have to kill you. we have the nice thing about making bourbons and whiskeys like we do, that we've got probably about 100 different variables to deal with, and the nice thing for us, we have a little bit of an advantage because we've been making it for 200 plus years, and so we got a lot of really good standards and a lot of history and experience on the way to make bourbon, and really all the focus has to be up front, because all the work of good ingredients, nice recipes, proper yeast, and all those different things. Once you get it in the barrel, you're done. The work is done once you've selected the barrel and all that. So you got to do all that work up front. And like I said, the advantage that we have is the history that we have. And we've got over 500 people now at the distillery, and every one of them contribute to that barrel, in some way. Mm-hmm. So we've got just so many really good, experienced professionals, and do this day in and day out, and that's what we're all about.
It's funny, there's no, you think about it, I think about it sometimes, you mentioned all the work is done up front. There's no do-overs, there's nothing you can do on the back end of any of these whiskeys to make them better. You had to get it right up front because you've waited for 15 years, and you just, I think that's where all the experience and history comes into play.
We do have a lot of questions, and I'll group them again based on selecting certain barrels for Stagg Junior versus aging them up to George T. Stagg. And we've touched on this on past Whiskey Wednesdays about the importance of the taste panel and how that's kind of selected. Could we talk about that a little bit, and just the extensiveness of taste in the taste panel? I know you're both obviously on that. So,
well, we do have a pretty extensive taste panel that does a lot of work in tasting each batch, and depending on the recipes and the brands that we're tasting for. But all these barrels that we produce are based on anticipated use. So we know that we need so many thousand barrels of George T. Stagg and so many Stagg Juniors, and we make all these barrels up front with that recipe in mind. And then as time goes on, we'll taste those along the way to see what they can be, really. And that's the fun part about it.
Mm-hmm. Somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'd like to ask Harlen. You've talked about this before, but just how George T. Stagg came to be. There's a nice story about lots of experienced palates and folks sitting down and tasting really interesting barrels.
Yeah, I mean, the idea really came from consumers. Mm-hmm. And a consumer, wrote our CEO one day and said, I think you should offer barrel strength, bourbon. And of course, we said we don't know if anybody's ready for 130, 140 proof bourbons at the time, but we thought about it, and we brought in some retired, professionals and some people that worked here for a lot of years, and brought it in and tasted different bourbons and decided on the recipe. We decided 15 years and what the offering is now. Like you said, I think it was around 2002 or 1 or whatever it was, but we we based it on experience. We got the idea for consumers. We wanted it to be one of our better whiskeys that we can offer at the distillery.
Was it an overwhelming, this is the one, or was there some debate amongst all of you? And was there anybody in the room that we may recognize some names?
I'd say Elmer T. Lee. Some people might know
Yeah.
Elmer, and we had a lot of a couple different writers involved. We had some more retired people worked there for a lot of years, and we don't want to give away all of our
Yeah, exactly.
secrets, I don't guess.
Was that an early? Were you in? You were obviously in that room that day.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you?
Well, for me at the time, you're thinking 18 years ago. I've been at it for 26 years, but for me it was just fun to be around a bunch of guys with a lot of experience in the room. We probably had 500 years of experience sitting in that room, tasting bourbons and being able to pick out one. It was fun to be part of it.
That's great. So guys, we're over 20 minutes here. We do have so many questions coming in. We have folks from the UK, a lot of folks from Florida chiming in. Is there anything you guys want to close on or close it out, or you want to answer some more questions?
I just think, for us, Stagg is kind of the cream of the crop, and it's one that we're proud to offer, and it does represent the distillery, and it's got a long history with the distillery, the Stagg brand, and we're just happy that people are enjoying it, and we got more coming.
That's right.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in and being fans, and definitely try it at your local whiskey bar, restaurant, or at a friend's house, and we'll keep making more. Hopefully it gets a little easier to find, but certainly worth it. It's a personal favorite of mine as well. So
great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks to both of you, and thanks for pouring all this Stagg out on this table.
Cool.
Great way to ring in the new year, by the way.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah.